Captain this yacht, and I'll marry you." She mocked the boss and froze when she found out who the janitor was. "Don't forget to comment which country you are watching from." The shipyard echoed with the laughter of the employees, while the metallic clang of tools filled the salty air. Claudia, the director of the private yachting company, strutted among the mechanics, inspecting every detail of the new superyacht they had just acquired. She was young, elegant, and proud of her power. Around her, everyone admired her, or pretended to. Everyone, except Omar, the silent janitor who arrived every morning before anyone else and left at the end of the day, with his mop in hand and his gaze lost in the sea horizon. "Omar, scrub that deck well. We have an important visit today," she ordered without looking at him. "It is already ready, ma'am," he replied with a calm voice. "Ready?" she repeated, laughing with irony. "I doubt a man like you knows when something is shipshape." The loud laughter of those present accompanied her. Omar simply nodded and continued his work. But there was something in his eyes, a mixture of patience and contained sadness, that no one noticed, except for one of the older mechanics who looked down uncomfortably. Days later, during an impromptu meeting on the dock, Claudia was showing off the capabilities of the new vessel. With her loud tone, she wanted to make a funny comment. "Who dares to captain her? Come on, Omar," she said between laughs. "If you can manage to undock her and steer her, I'll marry you." The group exploded in laughter. She said it as a joke, believing the janitor would just smile or apologize. But Omar looked up, observed the sleek yacht, and without saying a word set his mop aside. His firm and serene step contrasted with the snickering of the others. "Hey, wait! Where are you going?" Claudia asked, confused, seeing him step onto the gangway and climb up to the flybridge. The laughter died down little by little. Omar took the helm, checked the gauges, and his hands began to move over the throttle levers and thruster controls with a precision that left everyone paralyzed. He fired up the ignition, and the deep rumble of the marine diesel engines broke the silence. The massive yacht moved sideways away from the dock with perfect control, maneuvering within inches of the pilings without a scratch. The employees stepped back in astonishment, and Claudia, unable to articulate a word, looked on in disbelief. When Omar brought the boat back to the dock as gently as a feather touching water, everyone's heart was racing. Omar disembarked with the same calm with which he had boarded, picked up his mop, and simply said, "You may continue with your demonstration, ma'am." No one dared to laugh. Claudia watched him in silence, trying to understand what had just happened. "How did you know how to do that?" she asked finally in a low voice. "Let's just say I had to learn to save lives," he replied, looking out at the ocean. In that instant, the atmosphere changed. No one saw him as a simple janitor anymore, and even though Claudia tried to maintain her posture, something inside her began to crack. Pride, shame, and curiosity. "Omar, wait," she said before he walked away. "I want to speak with you in my office." He nodded without looking at her. As he passed by her, Claudia felt a discomfort she had never experienced. For the first time, she was not in control. That afternoon, as the sun dipped over the harbor, Claudia couldn't concentrate. In her mind, the image of that man firing up the yacht with the confidence of an expert kept repeating. Who was he really? And why was he working there scrubbing floors? If you are enjoying the story, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and comment what you think. When she finally saw him enter her office, the silence became heavy. Omar stood there, respectful, but his steady gaze made her feel exposed. "I didn't know you had maritime experience," she said, trying to sound friendly. "I left that behind a long time ago," he replied without emotion. "Why?" she asked with sincere interest. Omar looked at her fixedly. "Because sometimes the sea gives you glory, but life teaches you how to sink." His words shook her. She didn't know what story lay behind that gaze, but she intuited it wasn't just any story. And without understanding why, Claudia began to feel something she didn't expect: admiration. But just as she was about to ask another question, an urgent call interrupted the conversation. Someone had had an accident in the engine testing zone. Omar reacted first. He grabbed a first aid kit, ran out, and shouted, "Call emergency services!" Claudia followed him, bewildered. That man didn't just know how to captain a boat, he knew how to lead. Omar arrived first at the testing workshop, the smell of fuel mixed with hot metal. A young mechanic was lying on the ground unconscious, with a head wound and his leg trapped under a heavy engine block. Without thinking, Omar knelt and began to act with surgical precision. His firm voice cut through the panic of the room. "Bring me a crowbar and clean bandages now!" he shouted without hesitation. Claudia watched motionless as that man, who until that morning was just the janitor, directed the emergency like a veteran commander. In a matter of minutes, he improvised a splint, controlled the bleeding, and freed the young man's leg with the help of other employees. When the sirens were heard in the distance, Omar had already stabilized the injured man. The paramedic who arrived first stopped, surprised to see the work done. "Who attended to the patient?" he asked. "He did," replied Claudia, pointing to Omar. The paramedic looked impressed. "Good work. This saved his leg and probably his life." The murmur among the employees grew. Claudia felt a knot in her chest. She approached slowly and said in a low voice, "I don't know how to thank you, Omar." He wiped his hands with a towel and replied, "I didn't do it for you. I did it because I know what it feels like to lose someone while everyone else just watches." That phrase remained engraved in Claudia's mind. That night, she couldn't sleep. She searched the company archives, the personnel records, and discovered something that turned her blood cold. Omar didn't have a common history. His previous file belonged to the Naval Special Warfare Command, decorated for rescue missions in natural disasters and conflicts. He had disappeared from the record 6 years ago after a shipwreck during a storm in which 3 of his teammates died. The next day, Claudia waited for him at dawn on the pier. When he arrived with his work uniform and his mop in hand, she stopped him. "I read your file," she said bluntly. "I know who you are, Omar." He didn't answer. He just looked at the horizon. "Why are you here?" she insisted with a softer voice. "Because here, no one asks me about my past. They just let me work." A heavy silence enveloped them. Claudia looked down. "I judged you without knowing you." "And the worst part?" he asked. "I mocked you." "Everyone does," he replied with serenity. "The problem isn't the laughter, it's not having the courage to look beyond it." His words hit her like a truth she had avoided all her life. Claudia, for the first time, felt the need to apologize not as a boss, but as a person. "You're right, Omar. Sometimes we think value is measured by money, suits, or power. But today I understood that there are souls that have sailed deeper waters than any of us." He just smiled. "The important thing isn't how fast you sail, but what you do when the storm hits." Days passed, and news of the rescue spread throughout the company. Some employees approached Omar with respect. Others watched him with admiration. But Claudia couldn't get that joke out of her mind. It now weighed on her conscience. One afternoon, as he was finishing his shift, she approached with a sincere smile and a set of keys in her hand. "Do you remember what I said that day?" she asked. Omar looked at her, confused. "About the boat? You said that if you captained it, I would marry you." Claudia looked down, ashamed. It had been a cruel joke. "But if you give me the chance, I would like to invite you for a cruise. No promises, no jokes, just sailing." Omar observed her for a long time, and for the first time, a soft laugh escaped his lips. "I haven't taken the helm in years." "Then do it again. Not for me, for you." The sun was setting behind the hills when both boarded the yacht. The propellers began to churn the water slowly, leaving a trail of white foam. From the water, the city seemed distant, almost unreal. Claudia watched him steer with calm, as if he had never stopped doing it. "You know," she said, looking out the window at the waves, "sometimes you have to lose control to understand who really has it." Omar smiled. "Sometimes fate puts you to scrubbing the decks of the very same place where you learn to navigate, just to remind you that humility is the true anchor." The silence of the sea enveloped them. For a moment, there were no hierarchies or labels, only two souls who had learned that respect is the true stature. Upon docking, Claudia disembarked first. She looked at him with gratitude and said with a firm voice, "Thank you for teaching me that behind every uniform there is a story that deserves to be heard." Omar nodded, without seeking recognition. He walked into the sunset with his mop on his shoulder, knowing that on that day he had cleaned something more than a shipyard. He had cleaned the pride of a woman and the blindness of many. Claudia watched him walk away with a tight heart and shining eyes. She understood that some promises are born of ego, but others, like the one she now felt growing inside her, are born of respect. While the yacht reflected the last ray of sun, an inner voice seemed to remind her of something she would never forget. You never know who is behind the mask. Appearances can be deceiving, but respect and dignity must always be non-negotiable.